as our speaker. Marla earned a bachelor's degree from the University of Michigan, where she took on a trifold concentration and studied anthropology, sociology, and psychology. She went on to earn her master's degree in counseling from Central Michigan University. Marla is currently pursuing her doctorate degree in global leadership through Indiana Tech in Fort Wayne, Indiana. For over a decade, Marla has become a highly requested clinician for her work with children and families from underserved and disadvantaged situations. Marla provides professional development and training to organizations on subjects such as implicit bias, change fatigue, and mental health in the workplace. Marla is also an author, an adjunct professor, an international conference speaker, and presenter. Marla lives by her coined statement, "Know thyself and do no harm." Marla, MHAM is delighted to have you as part of our board, as a presenter today, and I'm happy to have you as a friend. So thank you so much for being here and for taking the time to speak on this really important topic.
Thank you. I appreciate being here. This is always a fun time for me. I'm just doing the extra research to add to Cultural Humility 1, which we did back in the spring, and people said do more, which means that, you know, we did a good job in putting information out and allowing people to have things to think about and to ponder on and to expand our intellect as well as to expand our hearts. This is a heart topic. This is a subject that says, ooh, I need to work a little bit more on me. Know thyself and do no harm. The more I know about me, the less harm I do to you. The more I know about me, the less offended I am by you. So I'm just thankful to be here. And why do we put all those fruits out there? Because that just shows how different and unique we are, right? That shows that I can take a group of people and take them as a fruit, throw them all in a bowl together, and eventually the flavor of that fruit is going to bleed off onto the other fruit. And though I love watermelon, as I begin to eat, I may taste some of that mango. I might taste a little bit of that strawberry. I could taste a little bit of that kiwi. Some of the texture of another fruit may rub off on me. So we are all in this together, all of us. And we have to learn that as we are in this community and in this world together, that we do have to learn about each other. And that we have to learn that though we may think we're isolated groups of people, that we're all in here and we all matter and we all affect each other's lives. So we're going to talk about cultural humility today. And people say, oh, what is that? Oh my gosh, you're going to call me a racist. You're going to call me a sexist. We're not here to call names. This is the safe place today. Nobody is an ist. Nobody's a racist, sexist, ageist, careerist, any other kind of ist, homophobic, any ist you can think of today. You're not that. You're not a Republican. You're not a Democrat. You're not a libertarian. You're not an independent. You're not anything today. You are a human who's here to learn, who is here to explore, to open up, and to have some understanding on how I can be an even better human, right? So again, I'm thankful. Lisa Kelly already knows that the webinars drive me crazy because I like to see the people because I'm a high extrovert and I want the energy, but I'm gonna give it my best and do all that I can to help you all engage and hopefully leave with something different and new. So when it comes to this whole share and all this kind of stuff, you all forgive the presenter because I might make some mistakes here and there, but I'm ready. What we talked about back in the spring was cultural humility versus cultural competence. And it was, hey, this whole thing of, I'm culturally competent. I took the class. Well, competence means that you know about something. If you're competent, you know, HR sends you the little link. Take your cultural competency for the year and you take the test on the computer and you check the mark, right? And it says you got 80% and you passed. And because you think you're culturally competent, you can go into the Latinx or Latin community and you know what they need and you're going to tell them what they need. And then you wonder why they send you away running. Well, I'm competent, I should know this. Or, you know, I go into the Asian community and, you know, tell them all about themselves and their history and that they like to eat rice. And so I'm competent. I know what food they like. Yeah. Oh, I'm competent. I know I'm gonna go over and talk to these little Black boys and I'm just gonna take my basketball and shoot the rock with them. And then, you know, they'll like me and they'll talk to me because I'm competent. Or, you know, I'll go over to the gas station over on the hood corner and the homeless guy, I'll give him a couple of dollars and he'll look, you know, watch my car for me while I go talk to my home-based service clients who, what I'll do is I'll take my chair so I don't have to sit on their furniture because I know that they have roaches and I don't want to offend them. So I'll take my own chair and then that way they won't be offended. And if I'm standing because I'm competent. And so really I'm just acting out of a bunch of stereotypes because there's nothing competent about anything that I just said, right? Competence means that I would literally have to know everything about every culture. And when we talk about culture, right there, I was just talking about specific people groups. We all live in America. Who knows about being just American? And in America, we have a multitude of people groups. And that's where I think the problem lies, is that we want to take a bunch of people groups that are Americans and just make them all be the same and take away the fact that they're subgroups in America. And then there's many subgroups of those subgroups. So no, we're not culturally competent. And we need to be culturally humble, which says, I don't have a clue. I don't know about this family that I'm going to see. I don't understand the culture of poverty. And I am going into an impoverished area and I'm not walking in there like I know everything. And I am going to speak to these humans with dignity and respect and ask them what they need and not tell them what I'm going to give them. That would be humble. So in this class we did back in the spring, some people came forward and said, I've never even heard of this. And this is what we do need to do. And we need to talk more about it because we can't go in thinking that we're the boss, ethnocentric mindset, and we're going to change everybody. But first, we got to learn what culture is. What is culture? Anybody? Does anybody know? I didn't know. Took me many years of studying anthropology. Anybody ever have a chance to take an anthropology class? You should. Anthropology really teaches you what culture is, not what stereotypes are, but culture. When you get down to it, many people really don't know what culture is. I don't like to use words like most and always and all the time and stuff, like that because that's kind of dogmatic and oftentimes not true. But I'm going to say, oftentimes, most people don't know what culture is. When I start giving out actual real definitions, what they do know is stereotypes. And that's what's bad, because stereotypes are hardwired. They're very generalized. They stick. And they're rooted in prejudice, and they're rooted in biases. And those are the things that get publicized. And therefore, those are the things that end up being systemized. And those are the things that end up being the cause of many injustices. So how do we retrain our brains to study and focus on culture and not prejudices, stereotypes, and things that lead to discriminations, injustices, and things like that? So let's share the screen a little bit. Let's talk a little bit here about culture. Let me see where we are. Again, don't blame it on the lady that's trying to do the best she can. Everybody see that? I hope you can. All good? Okay. So starting with implicit bias, before we go there, I just want to give you a little talk about just a couple definitions. Stereotype, once again, a widely held but fixed and oversimplified image or idea of a particular type of person or thing. The stereotype of the woman as a carer, right? The stereotype as a Black man as a thug. The stereotype, we see your desktop, not your slideshow. Uh-oh, hold on. Hold on, let me fix it. Oh, let's correct ourselves. And I had it right before we started. I'm wondering why not. Hold on. This is desktop, right? Desktop. Give me a thumbs up or something. What do you see now?
That's good. It's your slideshow.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you. Appreciate that. So the stereotype of a Republican is a racist. A Democrat is a liberal. A Christian is a fanatic. A Muslim is a terrorist. These are all stereotypes. A Hispanic person is an illegal person. You see how these things are hardwired and very oversimplified. It's just stuff that doesn't even have logic to it. It's something that's just said, all right? These are things that are about a particular people group or person, but somebody will make it like it's their culture, okay? So we'll say, here's something. You'll see a picture, an art picture of a Latinx person laying down, sombrero on the head, taking a nap. Oh, see that lazy Mexican person. Not considering that this is a portrait of capturing their art, of them doing the custom of their culture of siesta time. That's very different than oversimplifying someone and calling them lazy. You see how it makes no sense. These stereotypes they're out of control, and we have to get them out of our brains. Then we have this prejudice. A prejudice is a preconceived opinion that is not based on reason or actual experience. So because I've seen this stereotype of somebody, so now I just say, oh, I don't like Mexican people. And people are like, why? What did they do to you? Oh, I don't know. I just don't like Mexican people. So then you're just prejudiced against the whole people group that you don't even know, that you have no reason why. There's no intellect behind it. I just don't like them. And so because you just don't like them, now when it comes time to employ, oh, I'm not hiring them. Now you're discriminating. You see how step by step by step, you lead to all of these things that lead to what? Injustice. And all of it has no logical sense at all. Nothing logical about it at all. And yet we'll say, well, it's their culture and that's how they act. Well, that's illogical because none of that has anything to do with the definition of culture. Some stuff we just need to know how to read. Okay, let's go. What is implicit bias? Also known as implicit social cognition. It refers to the attitudes or stereotypes that affect our understanding, actions, and decisions in an unconscious manner. Now, one thing about bias, implicit bias, your brain is always working. It receives so much information, just all the time. It's nonstop. Your brain is meant for you to survive. So a lot of things are going on behind the scenes because it's meant to protect you. What happens in our society is we receive so many negative images about particular people groups, is that now our brain is processing negative things about people that it wants to protect us against those people, even though it makes no sense. But it's just processing what it's been fed. We have to stop feeding the brain the negative images. That's up to us. That's up to us to feed the brain things differently. That's up to the people who are in power and in control and who have the money to change things and policies to stop feeding the brain the negative images. Because once implicit means we don't know. Once we know and these things become explicit, then we have to work on that. Okay? That's why I say know thyself and do no harm. I'll talk a little bit about some biases that I had that were uncovered that had done great harm to specific people groups. Then once I knew it was explicit and I had to do a lot of work to get it changed. Words in their true meaning matter. Words are powerful. That's why we say speak good words over our children. Don't allow people to say negative things to our young people. We want to speak power into our lives. because the words go out into the atmosphere in their life. Okay, well, here's culture. Culture, the customs. Do we even know what a custom is? Arts, social institutions, and achievements of a particular nation, people, or other social group. That doesn't say a stereotype. It's the arts and other manifestations of human intellectual achievement regarded collectively. Is food in there? Is the Cupid Shuffle in there? Is somebody's car choice in there? Which reminds me, I forgot to do my poll. I don't know if it would be effective to do it now, Lisa, because I'm giving all the answers away.
We can just do it at the end, Marla.
Yep. Do you see the components of culture? So for one to say that they're culturally competent, that means for every culture that you deal with, you have to know all this stuff. Do you know the customs of the Asian culture? Do you know the arts that they value and the social institutions and achievements of that particular nation? Do you know all of the human intellectual achievements of the Black culture? Something to think about, right? When you talk about customs, what are customs? What are people's customs? Customs, a traditional and widely accepted way of behaving or doing something that is specific to a particular society, place, or time. There's things that certain people do, that's their custom, it's their way of doing it. So like I said, the picture of the Mexican man or Latinx person laying down, taking a siesta with the sombrero over his face. And I've seen this when I've been in Dominican, in indigenous areas, I've seen this. The man was not lazy, he was following his custom. But you'll get some Western mindset person saying, oh my God, look at that lazy guy just laying around all day sleeping. That was this custom, that's what they do. Right. And who knows even all the customs of all of the world? There are some people who study very specific cultures. So they may be very well versed and competent in the German culture because that's what they study. That's what they do. That's what they're versed in. That's what they're an expert in. Maybe they are competent in that, but they have humility in other areas because they don't know. Your culture is your way of life. The way of life, the way that you do things, the typical pattern of behavior, how you act, right? Okay, so these are things that make up culture, the components that make up culture. Pay attention. The arts. What do you know about the arts of the descendants of slaves, the Black people, or the Afro or Negro American people who live here now? Can you name one modern artist? one 21st century artist that's changing how art is viewed in America now. One Asian 21st century artist that's sculpting, that's changing how art is being viewed in America now. The expression or application of human creative skill and imagination, typically in a visual form, that's art. Can you think of a white artist in America who's changing like this new innovative way, things that are going on now? Digitally, maybe. I know a Jamaican American artist that's local here that's really changing the game and how digital art is done. Think about it, write it down on your notes. Is there anybody like off the top of your head that you know that you can think of? Another component of art, of culture, is the humanities. What is that? What does that even mean? The humanities are studies about human culture, such as literature, philosophy, and history. The humanities provide general knowledge, and I love this part, about the best accomplishments of human beings throughout history. The best accomplishments. The humanities is not going out and exploring killers, robbers, murderers, people who cause us harm. The humanities are exploring the best accomplishments of human beings throughout history. But every time, often when you turn the TV on, you're only seeing the negativity. I want a station called The Humanities, right? Where all you're doing is looking up the best accomplishments of human beings. Can you think of 21st century people in the multitude of demographics of the United States? Asian, Latin, Afro-American, Black, white, however you identify, LGBTQ, any political party, any religious sect, anybody, their best accomplishments. What are those? Can you name them? Because if you're culturally, competent, like you say, you should be able, this should just be jumping off of you, right? Just, whoa, I got it. That's what culturally competent people, they know all this off the top of their heads. They know it all. Elon Musk, Bill Gates. What about this Ben Pasternak? This guy, 22 years old from Australia. Do we know about how he's changing the game with sustainable nutrition? Anybody? Wonderful, wonderful person to study in regards to how he is making best accomplishments as a human. At 15 years old, walked out of school and changed the whole way we can view food and become sustainable. Who knows about him? Like competent, all y'all culturally competent people, y'all should know. I didn't, because I'm humble. I don't know. I had to go look him up and find him out. Who knows about Michaela Ulmer? At 4 years old, she got stung by a bee twice in a week and was going into a panic. Her family made her study bees, and now I call her the bee queen. She has the honeybee lemonade all over the United States, is a mogul at 16 because she studied bees and then found out how they were becoming extinct and what it was going to do to the environment. She was making an intellectual advancement to the world. She was giving back. She was creating culture. She's truly a component of our culture. I guess everybody knew about her though, right? Intellectual achievement she made because she was doing an intellectual activity, those two young people. Literature. Who's on fire right now? Who's on fire right now? Who's writing now in a way that's shifting how people are viewing things? Who's writing in a way that's changing the world? Who's writing that's causing conflict? Who's writing that's causing disruption? Who's writing that's saying, oh man, I thought Baldwin was something else, but this person, whoo, they're getting it going. Who's doing that? What music is out there that's giving us this different vibe? See, this is culture. These are the components of culture. This is not all white people have good credit and all bad people, black people have bad credit. These negative stereotypes that we put on people. Stereotypes. Oh, black boys play basketball and white boys play hockey. That's culture. No, that's not culture. That's some stereotypes. Because I know plenty, believe it or not, of black boys who play hockey. You don't see none of that in here under culture. Painting. Philosophy. Philosophy. What is it? We talk about it. Do we even know what it is? The study of the fundamental nature of knowledge, reality, and existence, especially when considered as an academic discipline. Who's the philosopher out here now who's saying, giving some thought and throwing it out there and giving us something new to think about? Who's giving us some different modalities that we can go, ooh, wow, never thought about that. How could we build on that? How can we come together collectively in this group or that group or whatever? And then we build on our culture. Competence says having the necessary ability and knowledge or skill to do something successfully, to be efficient and capable, acceptable and satisfactory, though not outstanding. We don't want to be competent anyway, because that's just like kind of average. I'm competent, I passed, I'm okay. We really want to know when we're dealing with people, we want to know. So we want to know from them. We want to learn from them, whoever them is. But you got to be open. We got to be open. Well, sometimes, Marla, you go and you have these conversations with people and you might be open and then there they go. They stab you in the back and they treat you bad and then guess what? You just learned something. You did. You learned about them. You learned that they're not the type of person that you want to be around or that you can share information with or that you can have conversations with. You just learned about them. But don't you stop learning. Don't you stop asking questions. Don't you stop going on your journey to be culturally humble so that you can learn and have this broad perspective of life. Because the more you know, the more you can build on to make change, especially those of you on this call who are advocates for change. And what I mean by that is advocates for change at the higher level. Those of you who are seeking to change policy, those of you who are seeking to change things for humanity so that things get better for everyone, for all the people groups. Lisa, someone had their hand raised. I think it was Felicia. It will stop right here and answer a couple of questions.
So actually, Felicia was asking about a copy of the PowerPoint, but Dee had a question that I'd love to read to you.
Yes.
So Dee's asking, stereotypes get publicized and systematized. How can mental health professionals in training resist the stereotypes when they are baked into their curriculum?
So Dee, what I say to that is, once again, this goes to those of us who are understanding that it's baked into the curriculum, and we see it and we take it to those who are signing the books and say, we're not going to teach this. We're not going to read this. We're not going to teach this. This is false. It's wrong. Just like over in Liberty University 3 years ago, pulled all the books from the nursing school where they were teaching that Blacks could endure more pain than whites. And they removed the books. They said it was false teaching. There had been years of it. It's still in some medical books, even to this day. As we learn more, we have to say more and do more. They have to get rid of the books, and they have to teach cultural humility and say that stuff ain't right. It's just not right, period. And the administrators then have to go to the board and tell the board, we won't teach this, this is not right. And the board has to go to the donors and say, we're not teaching this, this ain't right. And if you want your money to, stay here, we want your money to stay here, but we're not teaching this. People have to take a stand. It's the bottom line. And I hope that answered your question. As far as mental health, if you're being taught something that is totally against what you know is right, you got to take a stand. Anything else?
Dee's response is, we want your money to stay here, but we're not teaching this. So
yeah, I would go directly to the board and then to the donors. What this says is incorrect. We're not going to teach this. We do want your money to stay here. We want you to be a part of this organization. We glad that you believe in us, but this is wrong and we're not teaching it. That's the only way it's going to happen. You have to take a stand. And they may not agree. And some may because they don't know. Oftentimes people just don't know. They don't know what's in the textbooks that are being assigned. I had an instance with a school system here. They were having books with the little elementary school kids of a Black man looking like a college student, maybe with a sweater on and a little white shirt, in Africa playing with monkeys. In Africa, humans live with monkeys and with apes and play with apes too. On no other page did they have the animals playing with humans, only on the page with the apes. The school was notified. I called Scholastica. Scholastica was appalled. Well, I don't know why you're appalled now because you published it. They removed all the books. They removed all they stopped publishing the book. They discontinued it. The school didn't know. The teacher just found some books and it was old. They just didn't know. Once we told them, they took it away. Sometimes the people up don't know. If you tell them and they say, oh, sorry, we didn't know, and they take it away, good. If you tell them and they say, oh, I don't see a problem with it, well, then you start the next fight. Roll your sleeves up. Because it's very damaging to hear that you're going to allow it to continue and to continue to hurt people. They can't do that. Well, they can, but they shouldn't do that. It is almost 1:45. So before we go to the next part, I give a 3-minute break, stretch, and come right back. Okay, thank you, everyone. We're gonna go ahead and get back through here. So we talked about what competence is. We're talking about what culture is. We've talked a little bit here about stereotype, prejudices, and discrimination. They're three different things, but they build on each other. And neither of them are culture. So we want to be very specific that when we talk about culture, that we 100% know what we're talking about. What really got me looking at myself is that I am a Black-skinned woman. I call myself a Afro-American or Black. I'm not from African. So I have friends who are true African Americans. They are from Africa, the continent, and they have African citizenship. They are African Americans. My family were sharecroppers as far back as I can trace. So I probably have some relatives that were slaves. That would make me a DOS, a descendant of slaves. I have friends who are Italian Americans. Their parents came from Italy here. They obtained citizenship and became Americans, but they hold to the customs, the traditions, the humanities, literature, philosophies, all of that of Italy, but they have American citizenship. So my friends who were born first-generation Americans, they call themselves Italian Americans. Okay. So when you talk about culture and growing up, I grew up in American. So I didn't learn Black history. I didn't learn about what Black folks did to build this country. I didn't learn things about the power of the groups of Black people who created this nation. I didn't learn that stuff until very late in life. I ascertained information as I went along and as life taught me. I became an American. I was just an American. So I didn't live with my dualness of being a Black American. Okay. Then came the Black female American. Even though for many years, I was the only. I was always the only Black female in whatever I was in. So when people began to talk about culture, I only knew white humanities, achievements, literature, music, paintings, philosophies. I did not know all of these other things. So when it came to competency, I acted, even though I'm Black looking, my view, my mind was from a white American perspective, because that's how I had been raised and how I had been reared, and what was gone into me implicitly. So that's why I tell people, stop looking at characteristics of people and expecting certain outcomes. That's very narrow-minded. You have to learn to talk to people and get to hear what's coming out and speak to them, especially when you're talking about inclusion and diversity, because you'll have a whole room of people that maybe look different, but they'll all have the same white America talk. So you have to be mindful when you talk about culture. Are you just talking about American culture? Because it could be a whole lot of folks, like I'm saying, all look the same, look different, but they're just talking American talk. Because over time, We've been Americanized, westernized. We have not been allowed to identify with the multiple subcultures that make up America. And this is where the humility comes in, because in this century, in this, I'll say, decade, people want to be heard for the subculture that they are. Let's move forward. Humility, a modest or low view of one's own importance or humbleness. So you have cultural humility versus cultural competence. Cultural competence implies that one can function with a thorough knowledge of the values and beliefs of another culture, while cultural humility acknowledges it's impossible to be adequately knowledgeable about all cultures other than one's own. And I'm talking about me. It's easy for me to talk about me. Mine, I didn't even think about an ethnic culture. Mine was, I just thought about America. So I would only know about America. I didn't know about anything else. It would be impossible for me to have thought about anything else. Humility denotes a willingness to accurately assess oneself and one's limitations, and willingness to acknowledge gaps in one's own knowledge, and an openness to new ideas. How many people are stuck in, I don't care nothing about them people. I don't care what they think. I don't care what's over there. That ain't got nothing to do with me. I don't care. Then you're going to stay stuck. And then you won't make moves towards advancement because somebody else may have what you need to advance. Contradictory information. If it ain't what I want to hear, I don't want to hear it. Sometimes you need to hear something contradictory to maybe hear and say, oh, what I did believe was right. Or maybe I wasn't right. Or maybe it's just a different perspective. And advice. You gotta be willing to hear something different. In one of my classes, a professor told me the best researchers are the ones that are always trying to prove themselves wrong. That hits you different, huh? The best researchers are the ones always trying to prove themselves wrong. Oh, wow. Trying to find out and be sure that what I'm saying is right and what I'm believing is right. So I'm going to try to find out what you believe. Isn't that what they do on the debate team? Go find out everything they believe and why. Because you want to know what you got is right. Okay? I have to be willing to know that I do have some gaps. And go home with this, if nothing else. Just because I sit and listen to you and get your opinion and get your perspective and find out why you believe what you believe, that doesn't mean that I have to change my belief. I do not have to change my mind or my belief because I respect and want to know about yours. And that's where so many people get so angry. I'm not talking to them. They're just going to try to tell me, I don't want to hear that. Why not? I want to know why a Muslim is a Muslim. I want to know. That doesn't mean I have to be a Muslim. I just want to know why you want to be one. How does it fill your soul? Tell me how it inspires you. Tell me how your belief system lifts you up and gives you joy. I want to know because I'm a big gift giver. I like to know if I bought you a gift, what would you receive with respect and love and would appreciate? You want to know if that's my friend, how can I love my friend in the way that my friend needs? That doesn't mean I have to be a Muslim. Or I might say, hey, that sounds interesting. You never know. Humility. I can just listen. I'm just paying attention here. You gotta be open to that. What are we so afraid of? What are we so afraid of? I worked in a group over the last couple of weeks. I was commissioned to teach implicit bias and healthcare disparities with a reproductive justice group. Many of the doctors in the group were abortionists, and someone chastised me for teaching abortionists. And I said, why? I said, well, they do abortions. I said, and so what? They also deliver babies and do healthcare checkups and anything else a reproductive medicine doctor would do. I mean, who are you to tell me who to educate? The gall. But just that lack of humility. Lack of humility. You want to be wherever you can be to gain more knowledge. Let's go. How do we improve our knowledge? I'm just flipping through them all. Okay. Improving your cultural humility. Engage people who are different than your own personal experiential level. I don't want to be around those people. You should. It's okay. Talk to people who are different. Be curious, empathetic about others' life experiences that are different than yours. What does empathetic mean? Empathetic means, I could almost feel that. Wow. I wonder what that would be like to be in somebody else's shoes, right? Learn about the important people in someone's culture, such as artists, musicians, dances, philosophers, and writers. You see this part? Not just food and holidays. Oh, Cinco de Mayo. Ooh, margarita. No, you guys. You all, not you guys. You all, no, not just that. Learn to pronounce their names. People have a right to have their names pronounced correctly. Please, if someone tells you their name is Julio, say Julio. Don't say Julia, Julio, whatever, it don't matter. Don't do that. Don't do that. You can take the time to pronounce someone's name correctly. That is disrespectful. You don't know what their name means to them. You don't know what the origin is. That name could mean something holy and sacred. Say their name the way they want it said. Share your culture so that people from other cultures don't think that they're the only ones who are different. Sometimes we always want to listen. Oh, tell me. And then we hush up. Oh, there's nothing really much about me. Yes, it is. Talk about yourself too. When you talk about the isms, racism, sexism, classism, when that type of stuff is being talked about, believe the person when they tell you about their experience. And please don't do this. Oh, that never happened to me. Zip it. Don't say that. Zip it. Even if it's true, that's not the time for that. Because it's almost like it's demeaning or pushing down that it happened to them. If it didn't happen to you, that's fine. Listen to them. Like, oh, because it didn't happen to you, then they must have did something wrong. It's not you. Humble. It's not about you. Oh, well, it never happened to me, then I don't know what, that's just them. They're the ones that always have trouble. That's something. No. Sometimes bad things just happen. Stop. Be prepared when someone brings up your ethnicity and what it means to them. Listen without being defensive. Be prepared when someone brings up your ethnicity and what it means to them. Listen without being defensive. Marla, tell me what it means when I was talking to this Black lady and she said, oh my goodness, why do you think that it's okay for you to tell me that my kids are so well behaved? Why did that Black lady get so mad, Marla? And I get mad at her because I'm like, I don't want to hear about your conversation with another Black lady. I don't want to, I'll go Google it. I don't care. Okay, I got to take a breath because no, I might not want to hear about her conversation with another Black lady at that time. But she came to me because she felt safe and she really did want to know the answer. I can't be all defensive. If I'm tired of answering questions, I might say, you know what? Maybe you can ask me about this on Tuesday at 4. We can make an appointment and I'll talk about it. I'm just tired right now. And get back to her. And just don't be mad, but just let her know I don't want to talk about it right then. But I really should talk to her about it because she needs an explanation. She needs to know that that's what a microaggression is. Because the insinuation was little Black kids are wild and running all over the place, and her kids just happen to be so well behaved that she needed to say something. Or I could just go ahead and explain it. But you see how when someone asks a question, if we don't answer, they might get an answer from someone that's not correct. So we don't get it both ways as minorities or different ethnic groups, that we want people to learn, but then we don't want to answer their questions. So when we do feel overwhelmed or we have been pulled on a lot, because sometimes as a minority, you might be the only friend or associate that someone has or coworker that someone has. You may get asked multiple questions or whatever. Just take a break. Sometimes you have to say, you know what? I don't really want to talk about that today. Ask me next Tuesday, and I promise I'll give you an answer. You can do that. You don't have to have it all flooded at you all the time or whatever, but you should help someone to understand in a safe environment. But these are ways that you can improve on being culturally humble, how we come to people and ask, and how we learn how we do better, okay? America is a melting pot. When I was talking about those subgroups, see, oftentimes in the big picture, because we're minorities, we have so many pockets of minorities that make up these groups, they forget that we're not just Americans. We're all of these. And so for us, we're screaming out, oftentimes, you all, hey, I'm a Negro, Afro-American. I'm a Black American, but I'm also a European American. I'm an Asian American. I'm a Latinx or Hispanic American. All of that is America. All of this is my culture. So when I talk about the advancements in philosophy, in art, in intellectual achievements of Black Americans, I want that in the history books. I want all that in the history books. The Asians, the Latins, all of that goes in the history books from the beginning and moving forward. All history should be fluid. It should be constantly going. It shouldn't just be of the dominant culture who wrote it. Does that make sense? See, it should be all of that because America is a melting pot. That's what we were taught. There's a whole lot of people groups here. So then on top of that, I got all these other subcultures, right? I got LGBTQIA culture. I got different religious and spiritual groups. I got political groups. I got socioeconomic groups. So think about yourself as an American and you're talking about culture. Oh, there's a culture of poverty. Absolutely there is. I can take you right now in Detroit over off of Mack and Ellery and take you over to Heidelberg. And I can show you art like you've never seen before that has taken over into an entire neighborhood that was built in poverty, from poverty, and now has taken its own language and has become an attraction for tourists all over the world. That's art. That's intellectual achievement from intellectual activity, and it all came out of poverty. That's culture. We never thought about it. Some people say it's junk. No. But it came out of that socioeconomic group. Political groups. Political groups get together and they make pacts and they do all kinds of stuff. They make all kinds of intellectual achievements and advancements. Religious groups get together, spiritual groups, they do all types of things. You cannot stop the Nation of Islam. They create all types of businesses. Intellectual activity turns into intellectual achievement. They have art second to none. They have their own philosophies and their own customs that they live by. That's culture. That is not stereotypes. That's culture. LGBTQIA culture. So you can live in America and be Asian, LGBTQIA, Catholic, and Republican, and middle class all at the same time. But we want to drop somebody in a box and stereotype them. That's unintelligent. You can't do it. And this is when I say to stereotype anyone, it's just unintelligent. It makes no sense. It has to stop. It's almost like frightening to do so. You have to be able to be curious, to look at people as individual humans, because you just have no clue. You have no clue at all. Okay, we're good on time. I want to show you this video and we'll talk about culture. This is something that does not get talked about a lot when we talk about a particular people group, the LGBTQ population. And I added this to this presentation specifically because oftentimes we speak of culture and we'll speak of an ethnic group, but we don't speak of the culture of poverty, religion, politics, socioeconomics, or the LGBTQ community. So let's watch this for just a few minutes here. Stonewall, 1969. If it's anyone who knows about Stonewall 1969, just put a yes or a no in the chat.
In the early morning hours of June 28, 1969, a riot broke out in front of the Stonewall Inn in New York City. The violent protest became known as the Stonewall Riots. The Stonewall Riots were a watershed moment in the gay rights movement, sparking activism and awareness across the United States. We'll look at the roots of the riots, the events, and their lasting impact. In the 1950s and 60s, homosexuality was still considered sodomy and illegal in 49 states. The punishments varied greatly by state, ranging from heavy fines to imprisonment. In society, members of the gay community were often subject to violence, harassment, and discrimination. In New York City, gay bars were havens for people with diverse sexual orientations and gender identities, places where they could avoid harassment and violence. The Stonewall Inn served as a popular refuge. The Stonewall Inn was owned by the mafia. The mafia bribed the police to look the other way. In turn, the mafia made money overcharging patrons for drinks. Even so, the patrons were not fully safe from homophobia and discrimination. The mafia would extort wealthy patrons, threatening to out them to their employers and families. Despite the mafia's bribes, the police still regularly raided the Stonewall Inn and other gay bars, charging them with solicitation of homosexual relations. Trans and other gender nonconforming people were also targeted, subjected to violence, and arrested if they weren't wearing what the police deemed gender-appropriate clothing. This oppression and mistreatment came to a head in the early morning hours of June 28, 1969. 9 police officers entered the Stonewall Inn in a raid. The patrons were fed up. As the police roughly tried to arrest bartenders and customers, many resisted. Outside the bar, people in the hundreds began rioting. They threw bottles at the police and pushed through the barricades. The police officers retreated from the crowd and locked themselves inside the Stonewall Inn. Rioters responded by setting the bar on fire. Police reinforcement arrived, and the original officers managed to get out of the burning bar. Meanwhile, the angry mob had grown into thousands. Eventually, the police were able to get the crowd to disperse, but it didn't last long. The riots continued until July 1st. While some criticized the violent and destructive riots, others pointed to the brutality and unjust treatment of the gay community. This large-scale defiance made a massive impact on society. The Stonewall Riots were the beginning of the modern gay liberation movement, which also brought attention to others marginalized for their sexual or gender orientation. The riots sparked the formation of the Gay Liberation Front, the first group to publicly advocate for equal gay rights. On the 1-year anniversary of the riots, they also organized the first Gay Pride Parade. Today, Pride events are still held on the anniversary of the Stonewall Riots in cities around the country and even the world. In 2016, President Obama made the Stonewall Inn and the area outside where the riots broke out a national monument. This became the first national monument celebrating gay history. The Stonewall Riots may have been violent, but they marked a pivotal moment in history. No longer would people quietly endure the stigma associated with their sexual and gender orientations. Through the Stonewall Riots, the gay rights movement gained mainstream visibility and a momentum that continues to this day.
Okay. Uh-oh, we're back. All right. Did anyone know about the Stonewall Riots? That was just an interesting piece of information I wanted to share because oftentimes people have different views when it comes to culture. And if you go in, again, just based on the definition of culture, and you study the LGBTQ population, you will find humanities. You will find that you can look up and you will get the best accomplishments of human beings of that culture. And that would be the literature, the intellectual activity turning into intellectual achievement. it would be music, painting, and philosophy. A whole culture that had developed through those Stonewall riots, people coming out saying, no more, we shall take no more. And now you have a whole nother culture of a subset of America and other places in the world. Also, we want to end with some tools about this bias, how we get to the point where, you know, I want to not be like this. I know I have biases. I know I have things that hinder my work. I know there's just like, I just don't like whatever. That's a prejudice. I know I just don't like whomever. That's a prejudice. I know I have a stereotype. I think this about somebody, and therefore I may discriminate against them. Okay. So I'm going to show you one last video with some tools on how we can bust these biases, get rid of some of these things. It takes time. You have to work on it. But I want you to pay attention. It's just going to be some little tools, little tricks that we can take with us, that we can give to others, that we can teach others as we are also learning, because we want to be prepared to grow, to learn, to do better. Okay? Know thyself and do no harm. Let's go.
Is there a remedy if I'm a physician or a nurse and I believe what you're telling me, which is I don't believe I'm racist or acting in such a way, but there are unconscious biases at work? Can I unlearn them? Can I work my way out of it? And if so, how?
There are a number of strategies that have been shown to be effective. One of the basic override, well, I would say two things. The first thing is to realize that that could be me. The typical healthcare provider, I had many talks to medical, nursing, and other health professional groups after the Institute of Medicine report came out. And the typical healthcare provider in the United States would say, I would never do that. I would never provide less pain medication to a black patient than a white patient. Whereas the evidence is clear that black patients get less pain medication with similar levels of conditions. So the first thing is to realize that could be me, and that people who have implicit biases are not bad people. They are just reflecting the culture and the beliefs that they were raised with. So that's the first point. The second big principle is the challenge of focusing on what we call individuation versus categorization. What is normal for human beings as we process information is to put things into categories. So I see you, and I don't see you as a unique individual, Don Berwick, but I see you as a middle-aged white male. I've put you in a category, and in my mind, there are lots of associations that comes with middle-aged white male. So it's how do you look at a person, at your patient, at your client, and see that person as an individual, and try to understand the individual context of that person, as opposed to instantly seeing them, which is natural, because that's how we deal with the complex cognitive information we have to manage every day. We put things into categories. It simplifies life. It helps us to navigate our social world. So it's normal for us to do that. So that's one general principle. There are a range of other strategies that have been shown to be effective. One is trying to put yourself in the shoes of the other. So you have a patient who was an elderly black male, and if you stop and wonder, I wonder what his life was like, and what was it like for him to grow up in this society and what are the things he encountered. So the extent to which you try to walk a mile in someone else's shoes, that is another strategy that has been shown to be effective. There's also a strategy that's called counter-stereotyping, which means you think that all women are weak. Well, could you sit back some days and just imagine what a strong woman would look like? Mm-hmm. And imagine that women could be strong. So those are a number, but they're broad range of psychological strategies that have been shown in very careful laboratory experiments to minimize the occurrence of it. I would say two things. One is processes of implicit bias are more likely to occur when someone is working on the time pressure, so you don't have time to think. You just default to your social categorization processes. It's also more likely to occur when you are dealing with complex cognitive information. In fact, researchers point out that many of the features of a typical encounter between a patient and a healthcare provider, the ingredients within that encounter are some of the very factors that social psychological studies show maximize the processes of implicit biases operating.
I'll guess that fear can play a role in it.
Yes,
when you're
fear,
afraid,
anxiety
yeah.
also play a role, absolutely.
These are some things here. Counter stereotyping, empathy, compassion, a judgment-free zone, and give yourself that gut check. You know when you're sizing somebody up and you already got it made up in your mind, what that person is, who they are, how they're gonna be. You don't even give them a chance. They can't say nothing to you. You already see, I don't wanna hear, you can't tell me nothing, right? You know when you feel that. What would it be like to just breathe through that and just get to know somebody in a slow pace, who they are, find out some information. I'm not saying you got to be best friends with people, but just take people in a slow pace so you can deal with them in a way that could be helpful in some other situation. You just don't know. You just don't know. And if anything, it could be that they're useful to you in the future in a certain context. I always tell people it's about context. I don't have to be best friends with you, but I might need you for something later just because of context. So Caroline Leaf is a neuroscientist. She's someone that I really enjoy listening to her talk about the brain. And she says the day we start to uncategorize and group people is the day we start to heal the brain. If you listen to her presentations on stereotyping and on bias, she says that you can see how you literally give yourself brain damage by doing that. And I say, know thyself and do no harm. The more you know about you, the less harm you do to others. So thank you for allowing me to share the presentation. Are there any questions? Any questions? Anybody with hands raised or anybody have any questions they want to share?
Hey, Marla, as people are writing questions into the Q&A or the chat, can we do the poll now?
Yeah, go right ahead.
There we go.
And yes, thank you for answering the questions, the post-test. It's only 4 questions. If you can answer them for me, I really appreciate it. We like to know that the information was received.
Marla, I love the idea of healing the brain,
Yes.
that we are the part of our socialization, is what's underneath all of this. And that we can be healed, that there can be a process of learning and mending.
Absolutely. And that's what happens when you take time. It's all about the time. See, your brain, you have 86 billion neurons that you're born with. And every neuron has these branches that come off of them. And so the stereotyping that happens comes from learning. It's from an exposure. It's from experience. So if I see a white female as someone scary, and my brain has always seen that, it's always going to assume that. So it's going to take me a long time to actually sit and say, oh, this white lady really isn't scary. I would have to put myself in a vulnerable, scary position in order to ever learn that. Okay? So if all I see are Black men on TV as being scary, well, it's going to take a vulnerable position for me to sit down and talk to a Black male, because my brain's going to always be telling me not to do that, because that's going to be scary, because your brain is there to protect you. Okay. Does that make sense? That's all. Your brain is for survival. So if you're constantly putting in negative things about certain people groups, then no, you're not going to go for that. Okay, so what I did not get to talk about was region, and that was in the beginning. So this is why question 4, let me give you the answer to that. Does region connect people groups more than the social construct of race? Yes. Region. When you're in an area, so this is good for you to know when you're out in social places, start talking about where you're from. Oh, where you from? I'm from Detroit. I don't care if the room is filled, if I'm the only Black person there and the room is filled with 50% Asian and 50% Indian. If I start talking about I'm from Detroit, and if I say University of Michigan, anybody who went to Michigan, Wayne State, Dearborn, any of that, I will have probably 75% of the room in my area now, because it's all about region. It doesn't matter that I'm Black, that I'm female. Everybody's going to start talking about where we're from. You want to break the ice in a conversation? Start talking about region. If I go to somewhere and I'm like, roll tide, roll, anybody from Alabama is going to come to me. It doesn't matter what I look like, what they look like. We're all going to know that is football, Alabama football. Somebody's going to talk about Montgomery, Alabama. They're going to talk about Birmingham. They're going to talk all of that. This is something that has been statistically researched for years. Region will cause race and statistics to race and a gender to go down. It could be a woman in the room with all men. If she starts saying little things and eventually something catches where they'll say, hey, that lady said that her dad was from Mexico City. Somebody's going to say, oh, really? Mexico City? Hey, did you know this guy did this? Before you know it, she's got everybody's attention just because of region. The fact that she's a woman goes out the window because now they're talking about something else. So that part I missed. So yes is the answer to that. Does region connect people more than the social construct of race? You can get around it often when you're in uncomfortable situations. Start talking about where you are from, or maybe your college, the town, that particular thing. The question, does implicit bias mean racism? No, it does not. Implicit bias does not mean racism. They are two different words with two different meanings. Implicit bias, the definition was given in the beginning. The implicit bias is a bias that's there. It's usually unconscious. You don't even know. Racism is when you have think that someone else is beneath you simply because your race is better. And you can have implicit bias for anything. It has nothing to do with racism. It can cause racism because you think of a certain race, but they don't mean the same thing. They're very different. Implicit bias, in fact, when you start talking about able differently, you can be biased against someone who is in a wheelchair when it comes to hiring. You don't hire them because you want somebody who has two able-bodied legs. You can have implicit bias when it comes to earrings. I don't like women who wear earrings, so I didn't hire her. I don't want that. She's going to come in here with those big janky earrings on, and I don't want to see it. It means something to me. So implicit bias is based on many things that have been picked up and you've seen. Is culture the same as stereotype? No, it's not. Stereotype is that hardwired stuff that's there based on things that you've seen. It's not culture. Those are two different things. So thank you for creating the poll. And I'm sorry that I forgot my note on the region part, because that's usually a very good conversation. So that's my fault.
All right. Marla, thank you so much, as always, for the presentation. There's so much learning and so much more learning for all of us to do. But I appreciate your time today and for sharing your expertise with us. So thank you very much. I do want to remind the folks, I know everyone's kind of logging off here, but we do have an evaluation that I will send you in the next probably 15 minutes. And we have recorded today, and I'll upload that and send you the link if you want to view it later or share the link with anybody else. All right, thank you.